And so we decided to do it this way, where I would just ask questions to individual contributors, and we'll have it more as a kind of panel discussion, because each of the people sitting here could easily entertain us for a whole evening. So Nicholas Walker, the director, is here. Cornelia and Calliope, Maria Calliope, who are the chorus members, and you're the choreographer, as the real term in Greek is the chorus leader. And Claire, as we all know, is an eminent Greek lover, and Christina, of course, too. So let's get started. Nicholas, do you want to say a few words about why this play and why this evening?
Yes, well, what was the third force to have this event was when you're involved in these plays, inevitably students come and ask you what we're working on. And going back to Oedipus, we encountered students who seemed like they were having difficulties entering into the world of Greek tragedy. So we thought, whatever we could do to try to open a door to that world for them, we would gladly try to do that. So that was, one of the reasons why we decided to have a presentation tonight.
Very good. Let's start with the synopsis of the play. What actually happens in the play? Cornelia, could you tell us about that?
There is a slide that talks about the structure of the tragedy. If you can put that up.
Number 10.
The tragedy, the Greek tragedy has a very specific structure. It is like breathing in and breathing out. And like it says here in the slide, the first part is a prologue. And prologue comes to introduce the main subject, the main topic of the play. And in our particular play, it is given by two gods. It is not unusual that the gods, especially in Euripides, they give the prologue of the play. And then the second part of the play is followed, the prologue is followed by the entrance of the chorus. The entrance of the chorus is called parodos, and that means basically that the chorus comes from each side of the theatrical structure. And it is sung. It is written as a song. In our particular play, the entrance of the chorus is sung between the chorus members and Hecuba. And that's the first time that you see interaction of Hecuba, who is the main character of the play, and the chorus. And then comes the first episode. And in the tragedy, we have an alternating sequence of episodes, which means dialogue parts, and the chorus parts, the sung parts, the songs, which is lyric. And typically we have 3 to 5 episodes in a play, in a tragedy. In Oedipus we had 6 episodes. But in our play, The Trojan Women, we have 3 episodes alternating with 3 chorus parts. And the last part is the Exodus, which means it's the concluding scene of the play. The episodes are given in dialogue form. The chorus parts, the songs, are given in lyric, metric.
Verse,
that's right. And Exodus can be either dialogue or lyric. And in our particular concluding scene, we have, again, a song sung between the Trojan women, the chorus, and Hecuba. So it is a very beautiful structure. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. So I have 2.5 minutes. I can yes.
No, go ahead.
Now I'm going to tell a little bit about the synopsis of the play. The play starts at the end of the Trojan War. And Euripides takes the myth and makes a play, and it starts with the two gods telling us where we are. We are in Troy. It's Poseidon and Athena, the two gods. We are in Troy. It's the end of the war. The Greeks have won. The Greeks have pillaged. They have destroyed the city. They have killed. And now they are going to take the women and the children as slaves to Greece. And because the Greeks have committed hubris, because they have not, they did not respect the temples of the gods, they killed and destroyed. They killed the soldier. They killed people at the temples. They destroyed the temples of the gods. That's why Athena comes at the prologue and asks Poseidon to punish the Greeks. This is the prologue. The entrance of the chorus finds Hecuba, the queen, not having a lot of strength to move. She is in despair, and the chorus comes in, and they're doing this song of loss, this song of mourning for the things that have lost. Then the first episode comes with Cassandra. Cassandra is the only surviving child of Hecuba right now, and she comes in a manic state on stage, and we find out that she's going to be taken as slave with Agamemnon, who is the general of the Greeks. Then it is followed by the first episode is followed by the first chorus song, where we remember the night where the Trojan horse came. The horse came in, and we were rejoicing, and
Please continue.
all right.
We had to,
I'll be
because we're so
fast.
many, we gave ourselves 5 minutes each, but I think we need to hear the story.
So the first chorus song that we do as chorus after Cassandra's episode is we remember when the Trojan horse came in. We brought it ourselves inside the city, and when during the night the Greeks came out of the horse, and they started war in the city. This is how they entered the walls of Troy. The first chorus song is followed by the second episode, and the second episode is between Andromache. Andromache is the wife of Hector.
Image 15.
Hector is the hero of Troy. He's son of Hecuba and Priam. He's the hero of Troy. He's married to Andromache, and they have a little son. His name is Astyanax. His name means Lord of the City. And Andromache comes in, and they have a song between. It's a komos. It's a mourning song between the queen Hecuba and Andromache.
I'll just mention. So the picture we see here is earlier. This is Andromache with her husband Hector, who was the bravest warrior of the Trojans, and he's about to go off to battle, and they have their son in their arms. So this was perhaps earlier in the war, but now Hector is dead.
Is there. And this is what they do, the two ladies. The first moment of the episode, the second episode, is a mourning song between Andromache and Hecuba. And then they find out at the end of the episode, by the end of the episode, we find out that the Greeks have decided to take the boy and throw him off the walls of Troy, and thus denying any chance for an heir building Troy again. So this is followed by the second chorus part. The second chorus part tells about the promises, that how this is the second time that Troy, in reality, has lost the war. The fate of Troy, how it was built by the gods and by the action of lost promises from the kings, from the first king of Troy. They lost the city for the first time. And this is like a continuation of fate. It has a theme of fate in it. And this is the song, the second song of the chorus. This is followed by the third episode. And this is the episode that Menelaus comes in. He's one of the conquerors.
He's the brother of Agamemnon.
He's the brother of Agamemnon. So,
Conrad plays Menelaus.
and he was married to Helen. And according to myth, this is why the Trojan War started, because the Greeks, from mainland Greece, came to Troy to defend Menelaus' loss, basically. And then Helen comes in, and we have a scene between Menelaus and Helen. Hecuba is also there. Hecuba never leaves the stage. The same with chorus. Hecuba and the chorus are on the stage all the time. And Menelaus says that he was going to kill Helen, and Helen, she defends herself. She has this monologue where she explains why she did everything she did, why this happened. And by the end of the episode, we see that Menelaus decides not to kill Helen in Troy. Instead, he says he's going to take her with him back to Greece and kill her there. And this is followed by the funeral of the dead boy. We have a scene where the boy comes out dead and is presented on, his body is presented on top of Hector's shield. And we have a funeral procession where we say goodbye to the boy, the dead body. And that is followed by the exodus of the chorus, the concluding scene, and that is letting go of everything that we knew as reality. Letting go and moving onwards to the Greek ships.
Thank you. Thank you. So what was really interesting for me is in listening to your first description of the structure, I forgot all about the story. It was such a beautiful structure, a chorus, an episode, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, you haven't told us the story yet. So this is something that we're really trying for in this production, is to allow the structure to be clear. It's not like even a Shakespearean play, by comparison, is much more rambling. This is very, very tightly structured, this play. Claire, this play is also the culmination of a trilogy. So as you all probably know, the Greek plays were written in trilogies always. And this one is the only surviving one of 3 plays. Can you tell us about that trilogy? Yeah. And if there are characters that run through them?
Yes. Okay, yes to both of those. And just one comment about the trilogy. You know, these plays existed, and in many cases, including this one, the story was told by each of the 3 main playwrights that we know, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, but not the same way. You know, they do Oedipus differently, they do Orestes differently, and the same thing is true with this story. And so apparently a myth has a certain elasticity, or I'd say a mini layeredness. And if we are going to see, well, what can I take out of this play, or what would an audience have taken out of the play? There are, I think, some clues in the way that Euripides chose to set this play. It's the 3rd in a series of 3. And I'll just give you the overview. The first one was Alexandros, which is another name for Paris. The second was Palamedes, and we're not very familiar with his story. And the third was Trojan Women. And of course, after the three tragedies, there was a play with a more comic spirit, but usually a sarcastic, perhaps a social commentary tone. And in this case, Euripides chose Sisyphus for the fourth play. So let me tell you what we do know about these stories, because we only have fragments. And when I say fragments, I don't mean we have like 2/3 of the play. We have a few lines here and there, quoted by another source, usually. So we don't know exactly how Euripides developed each of these plays, but let me give you at least the story and what might have been the sequence of the building of some themes that culminate in the Trojan Women. Well, the first play in this trilogy, which he chose to call Alexandros. Paris had two names, Alexandros and Paris. The name Alexandros means defender of men. Now, this is another one of those stories that when Hecuba was pregnant with Alexandros, she had a dream that she was bearing a firebrand, and a seer told her, if you give birth, if you let this child live, he will bring down the walls of Troy. So she did what every Greek mother does in myth. She set the baby out when it was born on the hillside.
In Oedipus.
Where have we heard this before? But, and of course, just like that story, a shepherd comes along, raises him up. He becomes a wonderful, beautiful shepherd, and he's skilled in singing, and he's also shows other signs of nobility. This is how he's giving himself away, right? How he's eventually recognized as really something more than a shepherd. For one thing, he is extremely fair. Now he's beautiful on the one hand, but he's also just. He is one of the people judging a contest. I believe it's about a bull. I'm not sure what the animal is, but it's a sacrificial bull. And he chooses the best bull, and it's not his own bull. And so everyone goes, oh, really? You know, he didn't vote for himself. And so he becomes famous as a just man. And guess what? That attracted the attention also of the goddesses. So, oh yes, we need to see the
image 11.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the vase.
Yes, this is the Alexandros. Here's the part he's famous for, right? The judgment we call it the judgment of Paris. Because on another level of reality, the goddesses in heaven had received a golden apple from the goddess of discourse saying, to the fairest. 3 goddesses claimed it, right? Hera and Aphrodite and Athena, those 3. And so to make a long story short, they said, okay, first they wanted Zeus to judge, and Zeus said, I'm not touching it. And he said, but Paris who at that time was Alexandros, they went down to him and they said, okay, beautiful shepherd, judge us. It's not a fair, there's bribery. Each of them offer him a bribe. Hera says, you judge in my favor, I'll make you the lord of Europe and Asia, or that part of the world. And Athena says, I will give you wisdom and prowess in war. And Aphrodite says, I will give you the most beautiful girl in the world, take a look. And shows him a vision of Helen, right? So we know that story. He gives the golden apple, of course, to Aphrodite, and this sets up a certain enmity between himself and the other 2 goddesses. At any rate, he's eventually recognized for his outstanding characteristics as not being just a plain old shepherd, and he's taken into the house again. They choose not to kill him, just, we've heard this story before. So he comes back into the house of Priam and is treated as, they had 50 sons and 50 daughters, but he was treated not all by one woman, right? This is Priam, he was busy. But at any rate, so here we have the theme of a trial, and the trial is not exactly fair. There are some elements to it. And fair becomes something, I think, that Euripides wanted us to think about, because we're talking about different levels here. You know, in mythology.
Could I just
I'm
butt
sure.
in really quickly? I just want, while we're on the subject of the trial, you'll see in the play itself that the scene in which Helen defends herself is like a trial.
That's the point.
And, right. So watch out for that.
That's where we're going. That's where
Right.
we're going with this. Okay, so yes, and we've got things going on the level of the gods, you know. To us, it looks like they are not playing by the same rules, right? Or we don't see the laws they are playing by. They have a different reality. Okay, that's going on in the play. It's a little bit differently treated than how Homer treats it in the Iliad. But at any rate, so that's the Alexandros. The second play, Palamedes, is very interesting because this man he must have been quite a popular myth in those days, because Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides, all three, had plays by Palamedes. But the only one that we don't even have much luck of Euripides. What we do have, and this is the main source for information about Palamedes, is there are many references to him. There are in the Odyssey, there are in other things, but there is a treatise by Gorgias, and if you've read the Gorgias by Plato, you know who he was. He was a teacher of rhetoric, and his specialty was teaching how to persuade, right? And what we have left is a document with his two examples of outstanding persuasion. One is the defense of Palamedes, and the other
13.
is the defense of Helen, which plays into the third part of the play, of the trilogy, excuse me. All right, basically here's what you need to know about Palamedes. He was one of the Greek leaders, although he was not one of the men who, well, you know, when everybody says, I am going to war behind Menelaus, this is because many of the Greek kings had vied for her hand in marriage. And they all agreed, whoever she's married to, if anybody ever carries her off, we will all go support him in getting her back. So, Palamedes was from a famous family, although, you know, we don't tend to know him so much in the modern age. And Odysseus, being wise, did not want to go to war, although he was one of the men who was bound to go to war. So he pretended to be mad. I think we know that we may have read this story. But, all right, the Greeks could not, he was an important player. He was one of the strongest Greeks. And they did not want to go to war without him. So Palamedes says, I will go and I will investigate this. So he goes through, he doesn't believe that Odysseus is mad. And so I think this story is perhaps famous. Odysseus is tilling his field and sowing it with salt, you know, raining his field. And Palamedes takes his young son and puts it in front of the plow with the understanding that if he's really mad, he's not going to see his son and he's going to just kill him. And if he doesn't, then he's not mad. You know, it's a kind of catch-22, right? And so, of course, Odysseus does not kill his son, Telemachus, and they say, see, you are not really mad, you have to go to Troy. However, of course, he had this grudge against Palamedes, and that's where the point comes, because they all go to war. They're all fighting. And Palamedes was a very respected man. In fact, another part of his story, and he brings this up. Okay, wait, let me just go to the trial. Odysseus wants to get even with Palamedes. And so he and his friend Diomedes they get a Trojan slave to write a letter forging Priam's name, saying, thank you for all that you've given me, I'm sending you this gold. And as if he had been a spy. They then kill the slave and plant it on his body. And so this is found. Furthermore, they take some Trojan gold and they hide it in the tent of Palamedes. So they have enough evidence to go to court. So they do, and Menelaus is the judge in this case because they are on site at the Trojan War. And and if you want to see the arguments in full, read this. It's a 3 or 4 page document which you can find online by Gorgias. And the main thing is he uses an argument of probability, and this is where we find out all these wonderful things about Palamedes, that he invented many things, he did many things for man. One of the things that he invented was the dice, the game of draw and the dice. And in fact, there was a temple to Fortune that had the original dice in it that says this is the original dice that Palamedes invented. Is this that one
Yes.
that image? Okay. So you can see it's a little bit different from our dice, but I find that quite interesting inside this play. At any rate, Palamedes is supposed to be the one speaking. I may be mispronouncing his name, maybe it's Palamedes, but at any rate, he says, how can you believe I would do this when I've done all these wonderful things? He doesn't, yeah. So at any rate, that is his, and of course, Odysseus is much more clever than he, and so he wins the case. And they stone him to death. They stone Palamedes to death. So here we have a second trial, and this case clearly in myth. There are no myths to the contrary. Palamedes was innocent. It was Odysseus was not, and he wins. He loses his trial. You wanted to say something?
One of the things that we see often when we look at the Greeks is that, Homer tells it differently, and then you read Seneca did a different Oedipus, and so what is that about? And Perseo, can you tell us about specifically the myths of Poseidon and Athena as they relate to this play?
First of all, I need to tell you that this tragedy is connecting Iliad and Odyssey. If you read the last Rhapsody of Iliad, it's similar to the story that you are going to see. Instead of the Astyanax, the little boy, you see Hector. So Astyanax is the future, supposedly, for the city. Now Poseidon and Athena. Poseidon has to do with the emotions, and Athena has to do with the mind. So they plan something to compensate what the Greeks did. We know the story, the spectators know already the story. So every tragedy has a god at least, has a will of a god, has a promise, has a prophecy. All of this going around some divine will. And this is what they are working out, how to accept a higher will. The chorus gives more feedback to that by connecting the past. Why Troy was sacked. There was a previous sack of Troy. So all of this is giving a shock to the spectators because Euripides shows Troy, but he means something else. He is giving a judgment. Euripides shocking a lot the spectators because the year before he was staged, they did the same to the to the island of Milos, who wanted to be neutral between Sparta and Athens. And since Athenians could not convince them, they did the same what the Greeks did to the Troy. So he is passing his judgment. Euripides cannot silence to that. Athenians were very arrogant. So it is an anti-war tragedy. And now we are going to talk about how the myth is involved with the tragedy. First of all, I will touch some little simple concepts that you will understand very quickly. I'm sure about this.
16.
So it has to do with the word mythos. All the letters in the ancient Greek mean something except the ending S. So in fact it's mytho. If I take the O out of it and put it between M and Y, we have the word mouth. What does it mean, mythos? It means orally transmitted word thought, or opinion. So it's a word of mouth. What do you do with a word of mouth? What the mythos, it is for the Greeks the tool of the opening of the mouth. Just give to the mouth allegoric stories, stories that sound simple, stupid. 3 goddesses fight for a human person to bribe. What stupid things are these? But they have allegoric meaning. So we said what is it, how it is used, and in fact, all the myths for the ancient Greeks is their library. It's all their knowledge. The second letter of the word mythos is the ypsilon. Ypsilon means great accumulation of that knowledge. And the 2 consonants who have the concept means how to see the physical world. So there is a great information about how to see the physical world, externally and internally. Externally in the universe, and internally sequentially. And it is a sequential mythos, in fact. For the ancient Greeks, mythos used as the word that we use today, history. So history for the ancient Greeks is mythos, not what we know today. Later, it meant fable with an instructive characteristic. And today, it means myth versus reality. So when we talk mythos, there is a history behind. What mythos actually means is a sequence of events, a great amount of events, a long period. Nobody knows how long. When Socrates was talking about that myths were taught in the mysteries, you can read it in one of the dialects of Plato, it meant that they had history behind at that time. They called that history ancient Greek, what we call today the classic Greek. So now we are passing to understand what the myth includes, what the myth has. Myth has astronomy. Very first, if you read Hercules, it's all astronomy. The second thing is myth has practical philosophy. They brought the philosophy in front of the people on the stage. Euripides was called stage philosopher. All his philosophy is inside the lines that you are going to hear. Shakespeare is a practical philosopher. We know that. And if are used correctly this philosophy, you have an astral body. We start from outside, we go down to the application, and we come out back to the stars again. For example, the word theos, God, meant theos, star, or sun, or planets. That was the very first meaning. Later, and also theos, for example, it was Dias. Dias is the first name. Dias, theos, or Dias, Ilios, Dias, sun. Now Dias comes down, he enters into the practical philosophy and becomes Dionysos. It means Dias in the intellect. He enters in the intellect and comes out as Zeus. Z means Zoe, life, conscious life. So we have that one. You understand now how it works with that? Now we go to the tragedy, Melpomene. Can you put the Melpomene?
18.
The news. Melpomene is the muse.
Yes.
Melpomene is the muse. She always carry a sword or a club. She is the muse of a conflict. Tragedy, you will understand now why myth, how myth is connected with tragedy. Myth, when it comes down to earth, becomes practical philosophy, and if applied correctly, you have 3 outcomes: either drama, either tragedy, or comedy. Can you see in all these 3 words have the letter delta? Drama, tragodia, comodia. Now, dia started from the sky, comes down. Ramas means Ramas means king, celestial king in the visible, in the physical world. In English became Ram, the animal, because it's his animal.
17.
Now you can show Dias. This is called Tragos Dias, Ram Dias, Tragodia, tragedy. There is another way to see it, Tria Agodia. It means I lead Ago, Dia, the Jews, the Dia, in three. She mentioned trilogy. So, that's what, here, in this picture, he's above words. He has the tongue, which is the lingua, of the language. He is a higher state. I don't think so. I have more, but I don't need to.
I think we get a sense of how much is behind it. I mean, one of the things that obviously we're doing this in English, and we're obviously missing so much that would come just naturally in, like the th that you say, it's gone to a D or these other words. So, but it's really interesting to link behind it. We see these cosmological stories that are being played out. And it's not, as you say, just a funny little story. They're big events. And mentioning that Poseidon rules the emotions and Athena the mind gives us also a key that we can, I think, grasp ourselves as students. I would like to, thank you, I'd like to turn to the chorus for a moment, because the chorus has a big link between myth and expression on this level. And the chorus is between the audience and the play, in the way that it's the emotions are transmitted.
Yes, you can say that. I wanted to say from the presentation that what comes to mind is Homer's saying that all men are in need of the gods. Man is nothing without God.
And could you have a quote?
I don't think that. Do we have it?
Number 3. We have it. There it is.
So that's the thought that came to mind while we were exploring the Trojan women. And especially with the chorus, you can see that these women, the Trojan women, are going into a journey of transformation. They start confused and trying to figure out what has happened to us. We were celebrating yesterday and suddenly we've lost everything. It's like the gods have pulled the carpet under their feet. And so, and then they move on to be transformed, to accept their fate. And so there is this in between the gods and the human experience that the chorus is going through. And the first Stasimon, the first time the chorus is taking center stage, we recreate the celebration of the night before. It's a memory of, we thought the war ended. We thought we didn't lose the war. What does that mean? What's happening? So we explore that theme, and we got inspiration from a very simple movement, if we can show the mean on women.
Yes, image 6. Sorry, could I just ask a question while
Yes.
the image is coming? So the episode, the event of the Trojan horse happened like yesterday, as it were.
Right.
And so the city was destroyed in a kind of storm of violence in about 24 hours.
Right, and they're still destroying the city. And we look at it, we experience it now as hostages of the Greeks in their camp. We look back in Troy and we see the destruction happening. We see the Troy being inflamed. We see children abandoned there. And so, and a little bit of the image we are creating contradicts the words. The chorus speak about the destruction, And we are thinking about the celebration. So there is an interesting contradiction there. So this is from Crete. And so the movement we use is very simple. Everybody knows Robert Kidd as the Nine of Hearts supporting the four wordless breaths. And then we transition to the next scene by experiencing the anger, the despair, the loss for a moment. The second chorus is very interesting because the words speak about the myth. So you hear about Laomedon
And Ganymede and Heracles and Apollo who built Troy.
right. And so there are these incredible, beautiful images of light and beauty and flowers and very lyric description. And you know, the play has happened before. Robert says that Synfluence has seen everything again and again, repeating itself. And so for that part of the chorus, we got inspiration from the Fates. The Fates were three, usually goddesses, women, and one of them would create the thread of one's life, the other will gather it or measure it, and the third will define the length of one's life and will cut it. This is not great. This is from England,
Medieval,
but,
yes.
Medieval. But, it's one representation of the three fates.
Can we zoom just on their arms, because we see the thread there on their arms? Yes, please.
So we use movements that represent these three fates.
Image 3.
And there is an understanding that comes in the chorus body at that moment that, you know, we're not really so much individuals anymore. We are our play is controlled by the gods. And there's no way to escape it.
There was a quote that you had put from William Blake.
Oh, you can use that.
Quote 4, please. We who dwell on earth can do nothing of ourselves. Everything is conducted by spirits.
The last chorus part, it's the moment before the end of the play, and we use the archetype of the Virgin Mary and the covering of the head, which is a very old tradition of not only mourning, but also the veil that the brides are wearing to get married. So it's a very strong archetype. And it's the moment where, actually the chorus ladies spoke about it. They said, by that time, we are one. We are not individuals, we are one. We are one body. And they have experienced everything. They have experienced loss and love and distraction, and they are ready to embrace and accept their fate and move on. And so we use the peplums, the fabric, to represent the waves, to say goodbye to everything we know. And that's the last I have to say about the three colors.
So, because this image, when I first saw it when we were preparing, I was like, well, that's coming from a later civilization, but in fact, it's drawing itself on a much more ancient use of this cloth.
Right.
It's a line through history of using cloth in this way.
right? And later we have a scene, the Peplus image.
The square of cloth?
Right.
Yes.
Where we
9, please.
where we unfold this fabric to cover the body of the child, and I haven't seen this image. I just found it for this presentation, but it's very much what we are doing on stage. So we drew from Greek tradition, from Mediterranean traditions, and we tried to keep it simple and profound at the same time, because it is a journey of transformation.
There's quote 7. So to go with this image of the square, there's a line from the play, empty your household into a square of cloth. Seems to connect with that. And that's what you are doing all of your lives as the Trojan women are being just emptied into a simple, as it were, cloth you can take with you. And this sense of letting go keeps going through the play. Thank you. So we'd like to speak for a moment about music. Nicholas, you've chosen specific music for the production. What informed your choice and what effect did you want it to have?
Yes, well, music is very mysterious in the sense that these are abstract notes, but when they are arranged in a certain order, they can produce very specific emotions. And it's almost an infinite variety of melodies that touch our hearts in different ways.
We have some samples. You want to play one of them?
We could.
Which one do you want to start with?
Well, maybe I can explain a little bit and then we can do that. So, in terms of finding music, the other half of what I just mentioned was the chorus lines, because the music would be accompanying the chorus dances. So, just like music, poetry words can bring us to a certain emotional state. So the idea was to try to combine music with words that in some way could be married together. They both were evoking similar tugging on similar emotional strings and bringing us to a specific place in our emotions. And it just meant listening to a lot of music and at the same time listening, reading the lines and seeing what really touched me during that process. And so I looked at I listened to what was termed ancient Greek music, although this is also an oral tradition. There was nobody wrote music down from that time. So it was music that was passed along from generation to generation. And it was interesting, Cornelia mentioned to me that one of the pieces of music that was chosen, she remembered from her childhood as like a folk dance, some kind of a ethnic dance.
It's folk Greek.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, that was the genesis of matching specific music with each verse of the chorus. And before you play it, though, maybe you can mention, one of you can mention what's going on in that first dance. I mean, you said it, but maybe review it a little bit.
Well, we are celebrating with the memory of celebration of winning the war. And so we come on stage and reluctantly get into that memory. And it's almost a contradiction to the lines. It's a counterpoint.
Yeah. Okay.
Ah.
Maybe the volume might be.
It's maybe the music will have to wait to see the show. And at least it made us present for a moment, which is great. I mean, that's the main thing, isn't it? So, so we've had a kind of an express tour of the. The first chorus.
Yes.
And then there's a second piece of music just for contrast.
And what was happening here?
Here we have the three fades. The movement is inspired from that.
The three fades.
Okay.
So it just gives you a taste, and there are many others, and they have different tempos, and there's a lot that you can connect with different forms of Eastern music, of course. And even, I mean, as a Brit, I hear things from Scotland and things like that. So there was, like myth, music has really underpinned our civilizations. We would like to take a moment to open up. It is already 7:30, so if people want to leave, they may. But I think one of the questions that we've given something of the story, the myths behind it, and this incredible kind of cosmology and language that, alas, in English we can only kind of guess at, and the music and the role of the chorus. But of course, the big question is what does Greek tragedy do to us, and how does it do it? And the answer will, of course, I hope, come to you when you come to see the play. But there is this word catharsis that people use. We often use it a bit like we use the word Odyssey, without perhaps really knowing what it means and what specifically and precisely a Greek play can do, and we're hoping at least to come close to doing for us. Would you like to say, Cornelia, something?
Doing theater and watching theater as an art is is a tool. It's a tool for higher states of consciousness. There is a religious element in it. Our audience, and today, our audience in Apollo, when you go and watch a performance, it starts from a procession. You walk towards the theater, and then you take your seat in a very big theater, and if you look around, you see other people, thousands of other people, sitting in the same place, and they come for that same reason, for the communion with the Chai. And catharsis is achieved by experiencing what the hero or heroes, the hero, is going through, and by transforming the way they are transforming in the play, you are transforming yourself as audience. You are a witness of things that are bigger than oneself. Tragedy has a scale that is bigger than one's life on earth, small life on earth. And it does take you out of yourself. And at the end, the same way that the Trojan women, they let go, they relinquish everything that they knew as their reality. There is nothing that can hold them in the same place. They have to move forward. And to me, that is it's not a failed sequence. They have to let go and move forward. And in that way, you are transformed to a new reality.
There it is. Thank you. I'm wondering if we should take questions or if we should just leave it on that note. Let's leave it. Should we leave it on that note?
Yeah.
Okay. Please come and be part of the communion. It's what we do here, all of us together, and we need to do this together. Thank you very much.